In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these adorable Granny Witch Halloween socks. You can see that the front and top of the sock are a nice simple lace. It looks good, it's easy to make. And then the toe, heel, and sole of your sock is just your basic single crochet. It's sturdy, it'll wear great. I tell you how to make these socks in 3 different sizes. If for some reason you need to alter the pattern to make them wider or to make them longer, just watching the video, you will figure out very quickly how to do that, because that's really how basic and simple this pattern is. Now, as you can see, I've made it in 2 different colorways because I think it's kind of fun to have these 2 different complementary colors playing against each other. And well, technically they'd be secondary colors, but I think you get the picture. However, you can certainly make these socks in any color you like. I just happen to want to make them reflect Halloween. We've got bubbling cauldron colors. We've got poison apple colors. We've got all the colors that a good solid witchy ween wants and deserves. Let me give a warm welcome to all my Weaving Wyrd siblings, weirdlings, and just fun people. For those of you who aren't in the know, my name is Sig. I'm a retired tattoo artist turned active fiber artist and crocheter. And here on my channel, you and I get to create a little magic with every knot. So don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons. This doesn't cost you anything, but it does help me to provide you with regular tutorials featuring original designs like this one, classic patterns, and lacy motifs. There's got lacy motifs in this one as well. I'm always interested in your feedback, so feel free to leave your comments and questions below. Now let's get started. Now for today's Granny Witch sock pattern, I am using 2 colorways of yarn. Now each one of these skeins is 100 grams. I chose to go with the Hobbii Halloween Sock Wool Glitter. It's a superwash wool. I like it, and I think it's a lot of fun because it has this metallic, glittery kind of a filament that runs through the yarn that gives it kind of a sparkle, which is perfect for a pair of socks like these. Now, this particular yarn here is a 73% wool, 25% polyamide, and 2% polyester. Now, you can use any sock yarn you would like for this project. Just keep in mind that it really needs to be either a fingering weight yarn or a super fine yarn. These are the sizes you're going to see in terms of the appropriate weight yarn for this particular set of socks. So now, at the time of the filming of this video, Hobbii was having a fantastic sale on their holiday colorway of their various yarns. So if you're interested in these colors and can't find or don't have the colorway you're interested in handy, you can always check out Hobbii. They're always running one sale or another, and the shipping is pretty quick, and usually they don't require you to spend a lot of money in order to get free shipping. So it's something you might want to check into for those of you who are interested. Let's talk about what else you're going to need for this project. You're going to need a tapestry needle. Now, in this case, you don't need a very big tapestry needle. You just need one with an eye that's just large enough to accommodate the yarn that you are using for this project. Also, a pair of scissors, of course. And then your hook. Now, if you're running off of US sizes, you're looking at either a size C or a 2 hook. If you're going with metric system, you want a 2.75 millimeter hook. So for this sock, I'm going to be using 2 different colorways. As mentioned before, I have the green Halloween colorway, and then I have the pinkish Halloween colorway. And of course, you can use any 2 colorways you would like to use, or just use one colorway. It's all up to you. The pattern is the same, and the different color combinations will actually give you a different feel for your sock. So if you want something that's maybe a little more traditional, a little more subtle, you might have a nice sock yarn that is made up of neutral colors or something a little more subtle, and that's fantastic too. So for this particular sock, we're going to start from the heel. I'm going to work from the heel to the instep or sole, if you like, then to the toe. Then from the toe, we're going to move on top of the foot and up the ankle. And so I'm going to begin with my first color, and in this case, my first color is obviously this green. And depending on the size of sock you're making is going to depend on how many chains you make. So for this video, I'm doing a small size, a medium size, and a large size. I will be crocheting the medium size, but I will also give you instructions for what you need to do, or in other words, the slight modifications you need to make if you're making a small size sock or a large size sock. So to begin with, if you're making a small sock, chain 25. If you're making a medium sock, chain 33. And if you're making a large sock, chain 41. 1, 2, 3. So now that I've gotten the amount of chains I need to crochet for the size of sock I am making, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to single crochet in the second chain from my hook. And then after that, I'm going to single crochet in each chain after that to complete my row 1. Now, once I've completed row 1, if I'm making a small, I should have 24 single crochets. If I am making a medium, I should have 32 single crochets, and if I'm making a large, I should have 40 crochets or single crochets. So at this point, I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to chain 1. Now I'm going to decrease for the next several rows. So the way I'm going to do this for row 2 is I'm going to make my decrease. So I'm going to start my decrease in the very same stitch that I made my chain 1 off of. So I'm going to come in here, and for those of you who don't know how to do a decrease, I'm basically doing, there's several different ways of making a decrease, and here I'm just going to make your basic decrease. So let's do this again. I take my hook and I insert it into my first stitch, yarn over, and I pull that yarn through. And then I take my hook and I insert it into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull that yarn through. So now I have these loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through like I'm making a single crochet. And as you can see, I've now turned 2 single crochets into 1 single crochet, which is my decrease. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to single crochet in each stitch until I've hit the last 2 stitches in this row. And those last 2 stitches I'm going to decrease. So I'll show that to you again once I get to that point. So again, I'm going to single crochet in each of the next stitches until I hit the last 2 stitches in this row. So now that I'm at the last 2 crochets in this row, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to decrease again. So yarn over and pull my loop through. And then again, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, and pull my loop through again. So I have the 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull that all the way through. I've completed my decrease, and I'm going to turn my work. So now I'm going to begin row 3. And for rows 3 through 10, I'm simply going to repeat row 2. Now, by the time I've finished this, so once I've completed the total of 10 rows, if I have a small sock I'm working on, I will have 4 stitches. If I'm working on a medium sock, I will have 12 stitches. Or if I'm working on a large sock, I will have 20 stitches for row 10. So now once you've completed your row 10, you should have something that looks like this. Again, remember your 10th row, if you are making a small sock, should have a count of 4 stitches. Medium size sock should have a count of 12 stitches, and a large sock should have a count of 20 stitches here for this 10th row. So now moving on, going to turn my work. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to single crochet in each stitch. So I'm making a medium sock, I'm going to single crochet 12 stitches. Again, if you're making a small, you're going to single crochet 4 stitches. And if you are making large socks, you're going to single crochet 20 stitches. Now, once I've completed row 11, I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to chain 1. And now I'm going to start increases. So my row 12 is going to begin after my chain 1 with an increase. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to place 2 single crochets into the same stitch that I made my chain off of. So 1 and 2. That counts as an increase. Then I'm going to single crochet in each stitch after that. So basically I'm going to single crochet until the very last stitch in this row. And then now with my last stitch, I am going to make an increase. So it's going to be 2 single crochets into that very last stitch. So for me, that's going to leave me with a count of 14. If you're doing small socks, it's going to leave you with a count of 6. And if you're doing large socks, it's going to leave you with a count of 22. So that's the completion of row 12. Now for rows 13 through 20, I'm going to repeat row 2. So in my first stitch and my last stitch of each row up until row 20, I'm going to place an increase, and then every other stitch in between is going to just be a single crochet. So again, I'll show you one more time. For row 13, I turn my work, I chain 1, and then I increase in that very first stitch. Next, I'm going to single crochet in each stitch in the row until the very last stitch. And then in that last stitch, I am going to place an increase. So I'm at my last stitch now, and I'm going to place my increase. And that'll be the completion of row 13. And I'll meet you right back here after I've completed row 20. And when I've completed row 20, I will have a count of 32 stitches in my row. If you are doing a small sock, you're going to have a count of 24 stitches. And if you are making large socks, you're going to have a count of 40 stitches. Now, once we've finished row 20, I'm going to move on to row 21. And of course, your piece should look something similar to this. You should have this kind of hourglass kind of a looking piece. So for row 21, I'm going to turn my work, I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to single crochet in each stitch. Now, if I'm making small socks, I will single crochet 24. Medium socks, I will single crochet 32. And for large socks, I will single crochet 40 stitches. So now that I've completed row 21, I'm going to turn my work, I'm going to chain 1. And now this is where you're going to need to pay just a smidge of attention. It's not really a big deal, just because we're working with 3 different sizes here. So for the next several rows, we're simply going to repeat row 21. So if you're making a small sock, you're going to repeat row 21 for rows 22 through row 60. Okay, so this is basically the sole of your sock that you're working on right now. If you're making a medium-sized sock, you are going to repeat row 21 from row 22 to row 68. And then if you're making a large sock, you're going to repeat row 21 from 22 to row 76. And so once I've completed my rows, I will meet you right back here so that I could give you the down and dirty, quick and easy approach to the toe of our sock. So now that I've finished the appropriate amount of rows that I needed to finish for the size medium, this is what my piece looks like so far. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to working the toe. And for the toe, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn my work. And then just as before, I'm going to do the toe part of this piece exactly the way I worked the heel. So basically, for the next several rows, we're just going to repeat rows 1 through 21. And it will be that simple, rows 1 through 21, just like we started the heel before going to the sole. I will meet you right back here when I have finished the toe section of my sock, and we will compare pieces just to make sure everyone's still on the same page before moving on to the next part of this tutorial, which will be the top of the foot or the body of the foot, or can also be referred to as the, some people call it the instep. When I think of the instep, I think of the sole, but you know, everyone writes their patterns a little differently. So we really kind of have to be flexible when reinterpreting, you know, the way someone else approaches one of these patterns. So basically, yeah, but we'll get there. Let's just go ahead and get the toe section of this done first. Again, repeat rows 1 through 21. So now once you've finished the toe of your sock, you're going to go ahead and fasten off that color, and we're going to get ready to switch over to the new color if you're switching over to a new color. If not, just continue as you are. Okay, so this is where I fastened off the old color, and I'm going to turn my sock because now I'm going to start the next part of this, which is going to be the top of the foot or the body of the foot, however you want to call it. I'm going to begin in that very first stitch of the row. I'm going to tie in and I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to skip 2, and then in that third stitch, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double crochet 3 in the same stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to double crochet 3 more into that same stitch. So you should have your first fan. So next I'm going to skip 3 stitches, and then in the 4th single crochet there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double crochet again. Then I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to make 1 more double crochet in that same stitch. And now what that gives me is that gives me a fan and a V. Then I'm going to skip the next 3 single crochets, and I'm going to begin to make the fan again. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3 double crochets into that same stitch, and I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to double crochet 3 more times into the same stitch, and 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and I am going to skip 3 again, 1, 2, and 3, and in the next stitch I'm going to make the V stitch. So that's going to be a double crochet plus a single chain plus a double crochet into the same stitch. So now basically what you're going to do is you're going to follow the basic pattern of alternating your fan and your V stitch, just like I showed you, until you get to the end where you should have 3 stitches left. And then what you're going to do is you're going to skip the first 2 stitches, and then the very last stitch of that row, you're going to double crochet. And then you're going to turn your work, and you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. Now for row 2 of the foot, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to fan in the center of each fan, and I'm going to V in the center of each V, just like this. So I've got my chain 3, and then right here in this chain 2 space, I am going to chain or double crochet 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then go ahead and double crochet 3 more. So that will be my first fan for row 2 of the foot portion. Then I'm going to make a V in the center of the V. So in that one chain space, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create my V by making a double crochet, then a chain 1, and then another double crochet in that same stitch. So now I have my V. And then I'm going to make my next fan, and I'm going to make my next V. I'm going to just continue that pattern all the way until the end of my row, and then I'll show you exactly how we finish off at the end of the row before turning to start our next row. So now I've finished my last combination of stitches in this row. And what I'm going to do is, so right here at this chain 3, right here at the 3rd chain, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just simply double crochet right into that chain 3 from the first chain 3 that we made when we began row 1. And so that's row 2. So now for row 3, I'm basically going to repeat row 2. I'm going to chain 3. And then I'm going to continue as before. I'm going to follow the basic pattern I've been doing. Now, since this is a medium sock, I am going to repeat row 2 16 more times. So I'll have a total of 18 rows for the foot of my sock. Now, if I'm doing a small sock, I'm going to repeat row 2 13 more times. And if I'm doing a large sock, I'm going to repeat row 2 19 more times. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that, and then I will meet you right back here to show you how to get started with making the ankle of the sock. Now that you've completed the appropriate rows for the top part of your foot, and before we move on to working the ankle, I would just like you to notice that regardless of whether you are making a small size, a medium size, or a large size, you will have begun this row with a fan stitch, and you will have ended the row with the fan stitch. So for the small size, you will have 3 sets of fan stitches and 2 sets of V's. For the medium size, you're going to have 4 sets of fan stitches and 3 sets of V's. And then for your large, you're going to have 5 sets of the fan stitch and Then of course 4 sets of the V. And again, your fan is found, the first one at the beginning of your row and then also at the end of your row. Now we're going to move on to the ankle, and the ankle is going to, it's simple, but if you're not really paying attention, it can be a little tricky. So I'm going to try to go through this slow and keep it as simple as possible. So now that I've completed or almost completed the last of the row for the body of my sock, I'm going to make a chain, and then I'm going to fasten it off. So depending on the size of sock you're making is going to depend on how many times you chain. So if you're making a small sock, you will want to do a count of 12 chains. If you're doing a medium sock, you're going to want to do a count of 16 chains. And if you're doing a large sock, you're going to want to do a count of 20 chains. So mine is a medium, and so I'm going to do a count of 16 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So at the 16th, I am actually going to fasten off my work. Just like that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm then going to turn my work. And then I'm going to go ahead and here at this third stitch in this previous 3 chain stitch, I'm going to tie in again. Right there. So now this time, if I am making a small sock, I'm going to chain 15. If I'm making a medium sock, I'm going to chain 19. And if I'm making a large sock, I am going to chain 23. So 1, 2. So as you can see, I just finished chaining my 15. You may be a little different depending on what size sock you're making. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my work. Now that I've got my work turned, I'm going to start in the 6th chain from my hook. Now this is going to be the same for any size sock you are working on. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, which stitch we start with is going to depend on whether you're working on a small, medium, or large. So for example, if you were working on a small or a large size sock, you are going to start with a V-stitch. Like so. But since I am working with a medium-sized sock, I am going to start with a fan stitch. So, one, 2, and then 3 more double crochets. Then I'm going to skip 3. And because I'm doing a medium, I am going to make a V-stitch. And if you are making a smaller sock, let me try that again. If you are doing a small or a large sock, this next stitch is going to be a fan stitch for you. Next, you're going to skip 3. And then you're going to make your next stitch in your pattern. And for me, that was a fan stitch. And then I'm going to skip 3 again and make my next stitch right here in this chain 3, the third chain of this chain 3 stitch. And for me, this is going to be a V stitch. So now you can see I got my fan stitch, my V stitch, my fan stitch, my V stitch, and then I'm going to start working in each of the stitches with the corresponding stitch. And so if you're working with a small or a large size sock, you're going to begin with your V stitch and then your fan stitch. And you're going to do that as many times as it takes for you to get right here to this 3 chain stitch before you start working through the middle part of your sock. So for me, I'm going to begin with my fan stitch into the 2 chain space of this fan stitch below it. And then, of course, my V stitch. And then my fan stitch. So now that I've made it to the other side of the basic top fabric part of my sock, I'm back to where the chains are. In this case, this is my 15 chain length. And right here into this double crochet, I am going to go ahead and I am going to place my V. Now, just a quick note, regardless of what size you are making, whether it's a small, a medium, or a large, you are going to have a V stitch line up with the edge of either side of the top part of your sock. It's just the way it works out. Then I'm going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to place a fan stitch into that next stitch. And again, skip the next 3 and place a V. Skip the next 3 stitches and place another fan stitch. Now this brings me to the end. I have my 3 stitches and I'm going to skip those 3 stitches, and right here at the end I am going to actually place a double crochet, and that will end off that like that, and that will be the new edge of my sock because now we're working on the ankle. I'm going to turn my work. And then I'm going to chain 3. And then I'm going to continue just as before with the top part of the foot of the sock. So this will be the row 2. Now, of course, there again, since I'm working on a medium here, I am going to be placing a fan stitch above the fan stitch. Now, if you're working a small or a large sock, this very first stitch you start to work in is actually going to be a V-stitch. Then of course here on the former edge, you're going to have a V-stitch on the edge of each here, regardless of whether you're a small, medium, or a large. All three sizes are going to have V-stitches right here at the edging of their sock. The only difference is the amount of stitches, because of course your ankle is going to be a little wider depending on the size of the sock you're working with. So I will continue with row 2, and I will meet you right back here at the end of row 2. And then here at the end of row 2, I am going to go ahead and I am going to enter the top of that chain 3 and make a double crochet for that edge. And then I'm going to turn my work. And I'm going to continue just like that. I'm going to repeat row 2. And I will repeat row 2 5 more times if I'm working on a small. I will repeat it 7 more times for medium. And I will repeat it 9 more times for a large. And then when I've completed the amount of rows I need to complete, I will meet you right back here for the last bit of what it takes to make your sock. Now, once you've finished your rows for your ankle, you should have a piece that has this kind of T shape. Now we're going to do one more row, and that's going to be in the contrasting color. Now, if you're making your sock in only one color, then just go ahead and make another row. Otherwise, fasten off the yarn that you were using, and with the right side of your sock facing you, go ahead and tie in your contrasting color right here at this chain 3 mark, at the very beginning. I'm going to go ahead and chain 3, and then continue just like before, just with any other row. Make the stitch that's going to correspond with the stitch that you're working over. And then when I've completed this row, this last row, I will tell you what to do to finally put the sock together. So now that you finished the trim of the sock, I'm going to turn the piece over. I'm going to discuss the sewing. So we're going to come here to the heel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the point of my heel to the point right here where the edge meets right at the corner. And I'm going to do that with the other side, like so. And then I'm going to sew my seams together. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can certainly pick your favorite way of doing this, and that's fine. But I recommend a mattress stitch. It's kind of a blind seam stitch, and it works really well with a piece like this, in my opinion. So anyways, I'll show you what that looks like here in just a few minutes. As you can see, I've already started sewing the heel together. And this is where I had it folded over and lined the points together on the sides, and then did the mattress stitch on the inside. So you can see that it's hidden pretty well. You don't see a seam, you don't fill a seam. And so I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So what I've done is I've already threaded my yarn, and right here is the toe of our sock. And it's going to be the same thing that we did with the heel. We're going to bring the points together. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to sew from here to the point, and then I'm going to sew up along the edges of both sides. And right here where I have the 2 corners meet right here in the center, that is going to be where I end this part of the sewing of the sock. And then what that does is that brings me right up here to my ankle piece. And then when I get to the ankle piece, I will show you what to do. But for now, I'm going to just follow this line right back down here to the side point of the toe. And I'm going to show you how to do the mattress stitch if you don't already know. So basically, what I'm going to do is here along the edge of one side or the other, it doesn't matter where you start, I'm just going to go and take my needle and I'm just going to weave it right there into the edge, and I'm going to bring it right through, maybe what would be considered a row. And then I'm going to go to the other side, to the other edge of my piece, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stick it in and then pull it out. Oh, that sounded terrible. But anywho, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reinsert it into this side of the fabric. And I'm going to pick up about what would normally be about a stitch length. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to insert it into the other side of the fabric there on the edge. And I'm going to pick up about another stitch length. I'm going to continue sewing just like that. So it's just really as simple as that. And what that does is that gives you a nice solid seam without you being able to see it and feel it. As you can see, I've gone ahead and I've sewn right up the side of that foot. And that brings us back around the back. So this is the back side of my ankle piece. And this is the heel of my sock. And what I want to do is I want to align my ankle piece to the center part of the heel right here in the back. Right? So for this sock, because the heel across is a 32 count, I'm going to count in 16 stitches, and then I'm just probably going to use my stitch marker right here and connect the two so I know my stopping point. And then I have this other side of my ankle that I will do the same thing, line it up according to the proper count. So with a 16 count, I will be able to line up the back of my ankle right here, and then the corner of my sock right here to the corner of the foot where the foot and the ankle meet. I'm going to do a mattress stitch right down the back seam of my sock, and then I'm going to continue to do the mattress stitch right here along the seam where my heel meets the back end of my ankle. And then I'll work that seam right back down the edge of my foot and sole to where it meets right here at this corner again. And then I will bring my seam down here to where my toe is at of my sock, and then I'll weave in my ends and fasten off. So now if you're doing a small or if you're doing a large, same thing, same principle. Your count might be a little different, but it's all going to sew up the same exact way. Just make sure that your inner corners touch, your outer corners touch, and the seam of the back of your ankle lines up with the center count of this back end of your heel. And once you've finished sewing the top of your sock to the sole, heel, and toe of your sock, you should have something that looks like this. It's a nice, comfortable sock, perfect for the fall weather. And let me just finish this up by thanking all of you for joining me today. It was great fun. I really enjoyed making this with you. So until we meet again, stay creative, stay amazing, and always, always weave your own Wyrd. Bye-bye now. You have a fantastic week.